Hi, Dan.
Hi, Deanna. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for joining me at the Looking Back podcast.
Thank
Uh,
you for inviting me. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the success in the world with this.
Thanks. I know you in particular have had a very interesting life, a complicated life. You have complicated family stories. You've had your ups and downs. But I have to say, personally, I find you to be one of the most intelligent people I've ever known.
Well,
And on
thank
that
you.
note, yes. On that note, I will point out that often the truly intelligent people have the hardest time in life. So I'm hoping I can
Perhaps,
learn a
you
little
know.
bit. I'm hoping we can all learn a little bit from your stories here. Uh,
Okay. Well, thank you.
I'm gonna, yeah, it looks like we're recording and this is it. So Dan, start wherever you like. It's your story.
My story. Uh, we talked about this before. I guess you wanted me to talk about my family, where I came from, my parents. I grew up in a very conservative suburb of Chicago. My parents uh, uh, my my parents were both very religious, and they were both also very emotionally immature. And but we were a very religious family, and so it was multiple times going to church every week. And I was, uh, my mom was something of a narcissist, and she also had some schizophrenic tendencies, but not enough where you could ever diagnose her as that. But she did have voices in her head, and she had one straight from God, so it was hard to argue with her. Um, my dad was fairly intelligent, not nearly as intelligent as my mom. She was probably 10 IQ points higher, so she got to run everything in the family. And he had a good work ethic that, he instilled in the rest of us kids. And he was a nice person, a gentle person, and a pushover. And so I grew up in a very religious family. I was expected to memorize a chapter of the Bible every week. I had to be at church several times a week. Um, uh, in the 70s, when I was growing up, at some point in time, my mom's schizophrenic tendencies kept getting worse, and uh, uh, and that made her fall prey to every kind of televangelist grifter that was out there. And so we'd end up going to various ones around the country. And so I got to see a lot of the country, and that was cool. But my mom kept getting more and more involved in it. There was some televangelists, Kenneth Hagin, Jerry Savelle, and then she really focused on one, Kenneth Copeland. He's still around. He's like 88 years old. He's worth several $100 million. Some of that was our money. Anyways, uh, so she believed that she was God's personal intercessor for Kenneth Copeland. So she had to go to everywhere he went, and he was going around the world at this point. And so it was costing a whole lot of money, and she didn't really have time for us kids. Uh, and my sister was 2 years older than me, and my younger brother was 2 years younger than me, and I was in junior high school at this time. And she pulled us out of the private school that we had been going to that was very good, and she put us in to a school that we did all our work in notebooks, and it was very easy. I got straight A's, but it was you didn't learn anything. And then it kept getting crazier, and at some point in time, I had two older brothers at the time that were 8 and 10 years older than me that lived in Oklahoma. And so they said, why don't the kids come out here since you don't have time for them? And they were like, yeah, let's do that. And so all of a sudden, uh, I had my whole life, all my paper routes and everything else in Illinois. And 2 weeks later, I was in Oklahoma. And I was a naive little Christian kid uh, that didn't know anything about the world, and I had the world thrown at me. And eh, I finished in a private school that wasn't very good in Oklahoma. I finished high school there, and I started working at a pizza outfit, worked my way up to middle management. Uh, I was training new crews at franchises that were opening up across the country. And there was a franchise that had opened one pizza store in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they were opening up a second one. And they wanted me to come out because I was at working for the corporate company. They wanted me to come out and train the crew. So I did. They really liked my work, wanted me to manage the other store. The other store was a couple blocks away from a place called Highland High School, same place that the guy who did Beavis and Butthead was from. There's some other important people that have come from that school, but that was the store that I managed and did that for a few years. Franchise didn't do very well in New Mexico. They were based in Jackson, Mississippi, and they couldn't understand why people would want to put green chili on a pizza. And so they didn't do well here. And they closed down a couple years later, wanted me to manage a store in Jackson. And I was like, no, I don't think so. So I stayed in Albuquerque and decided to go to the University of New Mexico. I tried that for a year and a half, uh, and it wasn't really good for me. I had great grades. It's just it cost a lot of money, and I was on my own, and it cost a lot of money. So I dropped out, and hmm, and at that point in time, I had some friends uh, that were involved in various. They were potheads. Let's leave it at that. And we decided at some point in time that we should grow an herbal garden, and did that for a little while. And what else do you want to know? Tell me something. Do you want me to just keep talking?
I do want you to keep talking, but how did Albuquerque treat you? I know you came out of it with some good friends, but it wasn't a very safe place then or now. Um,
Um,
I know you moved out of the city. Did you move out of the city to grow your herbal garden, or did you move out of the
okay.
city?
I moved out of the city because, I was 23 years old, and it was like, I'm sick and tired of paying rent when I could be owning something. So I bought myself a really, really decrepit $1,600 mobile home that barely had a roof on it and walls around, but it worked. And bought a piece of property east of Albuquerque, a few miles east of Albuquerque, up in the mountains. And that's where I moved. And I've always been the kind of person that's a jack of all trades. So it was like, well, let's make this work. So that's what I started to do, and that's why I moved out of town, because I didn't want to pay rent for my whole entire life, and I certainly couldn't
Fair.
afford in Albuquerque.
Not even
So
back then.
not even back then, no. So yeah, so that's why I live east of town, and I like it there, and it's rural, semi-rural, and so it has lots of advantages because of that. I enjoy, and it's also higher elevation than Albuquerque, so it gets more precipitation, which is good for gardening, and it's colder, it gets more snow, which I appreciate coming from Illinois. So it's been a good fit for me. Uh, uh, what else?
Um, Actually, I want to stop there. I just want to
Okay,
stop it, and
okay,
we're gonna come right back. Okay, hold that
okay,
thought.
sounds good. Okay.